Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Learning Future podcast. I'm your host, Louka Parry. Today, we're speaking with Danish Kurani, and he's a Harvard-trained architect, urban designer, and founder of Kurani, a social impact studio rethinking how schools, clinics, and community spaces shape human flourishing. He's the author of a new book called The Spaces That Make Us, and I'm really excited about this conversation because I'm an educator and he's an architect. And of course, there's a beautiful intersection there that we really want to try to understand, you know, where we think about health, behavior, and kind of quality of our lives, not just the aesthetic. Danish, great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Luca.
First question, always. What's something that you're learning right now? What's a process of learning or discovery that you're in?
Oh, okay. Just today, we're working with a school in Northern California. And for the last 2 days, I've had 2 people on my team competing. We set up an inter-office competition to see in 2 days who can produce a better result to create a rendering of a space that we've designed. Doing it the traditional way where we 3D model it and we render it versus using AI. And we've run this competition. So the person in my office who's best at doing each of those, they've actually been competing. I think of it kind of like for any fans of The Office, the American version of The Office, where Dwight was competing against the website to see who could sell more paper. We had our own man versus machine competition, and I will say I've seen the results. They're in, and man won for now. So
interesting.
That was interesting. Yeah.
It is fascinating. A lot of the conversations we have here are about this, augmented intelligence space, and the implications of it. I'd love you to take us into the center of your work and even your philosophy. What is it that you believe about space when it comes to learning or productivity? Like, what have you come to understand as a, I would say like a leading architect?
So I guess for me, what I think about space is that it is underappreciated, that it is ubiquitous. You cannot escape the built environment unless you're in the middle of the ocean, or actually then you're on a boat and that's part of your built environment. But maybe if you're in the middle of the woods or on a mountain somewhere. But actually, if you live to 80, you're going to spend 79.6 of your years in the built environment. And so I think we focus so much on the digital environments and whether they're good for us or bad for us and manipulating us in this way or that way. And it's like, well, your grocery store is manipulating you from the second you walk up to the, front door, or your school classroom is heavily factoring into how well you're going to perform on this test or on this subject matter. And your design of your living room is shaping the relationship you have with your family members. And so I think it's underappreciated. Wow. Given how ubiquitous it is and how much we are products of our environments. And so for me as an architect, it was, of course I can go design fancy buildings all over the world, and I've worked for the architects who did that, but that feels so hollow. And I see design as a tool. It's a tool for solving problems. And so let's use architecture that way. It is a wonderful tool. We can actually shape and guide behavior and thought and well-being and health, and positively influence ourselves and our friends and our families and our communities. And so, for me, it's how do you use design as a tool to make life better?
Yeah. I love that. I'm something I'm really curious about always is like, how do we see? Cause if you see a product, and so I think part of your work, what I'm hearing is you need to be able to see the connection and the ways that space is influencing behavior. And so I'd love you to take us into some examples of common ways. And, we can start with the school space or the community space or the workspace. Yeah. But common ways that we're still designing things that undermine well-being, belonging, or learning. What are some of the kind of false steps or the, myths perhaps that we think we could bust?
Yeah. Well, and by the way, there's enough quantitative data out there on this, but there's also our own lived experiences that we all have. And to your point, if we start to become aware of how much our lived experience is being shaped by the environment around us, right? So because we've got a lot of educators listening, I'll tell the story. When I was in kindergarten, so I was 5 or 6 years old, and one day in class, like I realized, like, I have to pee. I gotta go to the bathroom, and our bathroom was at the back of our class. So I was sitting on the front in the on the rug. We were having story time or something, and so I get up and I'm going to the bathroom in the back, and as soon as I open the door and I walk in, another kid walks into the bathroom. It's a single occupancy bathroom, by the way, meant for one person at a time. Another kid walks in from a door opposite our door. And I think that's when I realized that, this bathroom is shared between these two classrooms. And this kid had to go. Like, he walked in and his pants were at his ankles and he started peeing everywhere. And he's just peeing left and right all over the place. And I'm just standing there getting peed on by this kid. And I couldn't even get out of the way because it's such a small bathroom. And like, it's... And the crazy part about this is, like, it wasn't even that kid's fault, you know? So I got peed on. I'm soaking wet. I had to, like, try to sneak back to my spot on the rug and, like, hope no one noticed that I'm all wet. My teacher, she was this matronly, lovely woman, Miss Ray. She saw me. She kind of pulled me aside, and she had, like, a pair of pants for kids who have accidents. So, like, it was the early 90s, so it was like acid wash jeans, but like everyone knows, like, you had an accident. And so it was like so uncomfortable, embarrassing, humiliating. But then as I got older, I thought about it, and then it's like, well, it wasn't really that boy's fault. Actually, the designers are the ones to blame. The ones who created this environment for a 6-year-old. Like, you want me, a 6-year-old who's like full-bladdered, ready to do my business. You want me to be able to not only lock my door, but to think about locking a second door? I mean, most adults are going to get that wrong, right? And so that was like one of my first experiences where, like, design just ruined my day. So forget the stats. It happens to us all the time. If we do want to get into even the research behind this, before we get into schools, I'll tell you, even in our daily lives, because often when we think about the built environment, I feel like when we're talking about architecture, people think it's just fancy high rises in Miami or cultural centers or places of worship. These places that make you go, like
expensive.
And that's architecture is so much more than that. Architecture is literally every window you look out of, every doorway you walk through. It's that ugly building in your neighborhood you never notice. It's the highway you drive on, the bridge you cross, the warehouse, as well as the museum. Like, it's everything, right? And I think we forget that, like, it's at every scale. It is it could be the chair you're sitting on, or the sofa you're sitting on, which was designed for a 6'2" Scandinavian, and you're 5'9", and so you're having back problems because it's so deep that you're laying back like this.
Totally. Right?
But it's also the way your city is laid out, right? And that urban planners and politicians have decided, like, this is how our city is going to be. There's studies they did in LA that when you sit in rush hour traffic driving home, and I don't know where all your listeners are, but in America, the majority of people that go to work commute and sit in rush hour traffic, and we have urban sprawl everywhere, suburban sprawl. When you sit in rush hour traffic on your way home, domestic violence goes up by 9%.
Wow.
So, like, we want to talk about how influential our spaces can be. It can literally drive you to higher rates of domestic violence, right? Because of what it's doing to you here. There's, let's say in schools, when we talk about creativity, there's studies that show that if I put a learner, and anyone, a worker, a learner, under a high ceiling, they can be up to 25% more creative, better at connecting dots between different subjects and things.
Amazing.
In schools, like, kids actually on average only hear about 75% of what you tell them, like what the teacher says, because of poor acoustics. So imagine, like, just because of the environment, you're already at the 75% mark of, like, comprehension.
Wow.
Because
Before
you're missing
any other yeah.
before anything else. So there's so much data that shows us that whether it's school, workplace, your neighborhood, just the way you move around, right? The walking versus driving and feelings of community, like there's so much that it influences us.
I wonder, Danish, like, I want you to put this, well, I think there's a myth here, right? Which is, well, I have character and my character can overcome context. And I think what you're saying is that context, and in the behavioral sciences, these are, and psychology, there's so much interesting work on this. But your context actually is a huge driver of behavior, and very rarely can we even operate from a character-oriented place because the context drives, be that psychological, physical, or whatever else. So I think there's something there about, because you might be like, oh, well, actually, I wouldn't do that, Danish. I'm more in control of my actions than the normal person, which is probably what people would say, right? I'm I'm an educator. I'm not influenced. And yet bad design is everywhere. And I think once you can see it, you can't unsee it. Double-edged sword, perhaps.
I mean, for the educators, I'd say, how good of a job do you do staying off of Instagram and social media? Because that's a digital environment. And you'd like to think mind over matter and that I can control this, and you know how addictive it is, right? Don't lie. Like, you know how addictive it is. And that's an environment that was designed to do that, right? And so the same way you walk into a grocery store, I can tell you, no matter who you are, you're going to buy more things that are at eye level. And that's why the grocery store has placed their highest profit items at eye level, or the size of the shopping cart. It signals to you how much you should buy or fill up. Or the fact that in most grocery stores you walk in and the produce is there first, because once you buy something healthy, you feel licensed to buy some junk food later on your journey.
Interesting.
Or think about where the milk and the eggs are. Where are they in your grocery store, Louka?
At the back in the fridge somewhere. In
the back. Of course, there's some refrigeration needs, but those are actually the staples. They know every time you come in, you're more likely to need some milk and eggs. It's going to force you to walk all the way through the store.
All the way,
and usually it's perpendicular to all the other aisles, right? So as you're walking along the milk and dairy aisle, it's perperpendicular. You see down every single other aisle.
Of course.
So, I mean, we may think that like I am like responsible for my own destiny, but in large part, like, our digital environment has shown us we are not in control the way we hope and aspire to be. And the same is actually true of your physical environment. I mean, if I put you in a city where the norm is walking because you can access everything, you're going to be healthier. You're going to be physically more healthy, right? If I move the TV from being the central focus in your living room to not being the central focus, you're more likely to talk to your family and have conversations and do other things, right? And so it's inescapable, and it's extremely influential. Now, the good part about this, all of this sounds like, gosh, like, in this nature versus nurture debate, and nurture plays such a big role, and the environment is influencing us, like, we're screwed. And no, we're not. Like, we designed all of these environments so we can redesign them. Yeah.
I love it. For me, the empowerment comes in the capacity to become aware, like, how do I see? And then to realize you can redesign. And obviously now I would call myself a designer after perhaps 10 years of doing design thinking and that kind of space.
And I think educators are designers.
Yeah.
Educators are
Well,
designers, by the way, because you're designing experiences and you're designing a way for someone to learn something.
well, not surprising, I agree with you, Danish. Although I think there's a couple of camps in the education space. I'm with you on the, you design an
Okay.
environment, you design an
Mm-hmm.
experience in which there are particular elements that are instructive. But the other camp is, I'm an instructor. So I transact, which is I
Mm.
have some content knowledge and you need to absorb that content knowledge. And so from
Mm-hmm.
a kind of archetypal standpoint, I think there's a huge loss when you don't think of yourself as a designer. And yeah, educator as
Mm.
designer, I think, is a foundational worldview. It's a mindset
Mm.
versus, well, actually, I've got some content curriculum to get through. I'm going to teach it. And you know, if you teach and your view of teaching is instructive or transactional, well, we're missing the social
Yeah.
fabric. We're missing kind of the design principles, perhaps, that we
Yeah.
would care about.
That's a shame because if you think of it as just purely transactional in that sense that like I'm going to give you the content and it's up to you to absorb this. That's like me telling them I'm going to I'm going to have you read some text and in one up and like the text is going to be this tiny and if you can't see it sucks like then I get like the
Yeah,
you're yeah I mean
yeah,
that's uh versus like I'm going to design it graphically so that it has nice contrast on the page, the font
yeah.
size is extremely legible, the paragraphs aren't so wide that your eye loses track of where you are, like I can make it much easier for you
Interesting.
by designing it, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think many people listening to this conversation would be operating in that transactional frame very much.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
there is a transaction that has to happen in education spaces, but I think it needs to be part of a larger principles of design and social cognition. We learn best
Mm.
together in a safe environment where there's motivation and rigor, not
Mm.
compliance culture. Um, so yeah, I'm really curious about. Yeah, so I just think that's my kind of reflection on like where we're
Yeah,
at. And
yeah.
certainly the future calls for us to become learning designers or learning architects is words that we use. You're literally
Okay.
architecting an experience, and then people get to
Yeah.
walk around in the experience you've created. Social, emotional, cognitive, physical, potentially as well. We forget about the body. So,
Mm-hmm.
also part of the issue, we're not embodied in these physical spaces, whereas we are sitting in our body where we could be, could be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love you to take us into a bit, and especially kind of the idea of some of the ideas you put in the book, the spaces that make us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, what do we know about great learning environments? What are some of the design features? Because I think on occasion you go like, well, it's some furniture and how you arrange the desks and we're done. But
Yeah.
take us more into the design principles conversation, perhaps.
Yeah. I actually think, by the way, that's one of the problems in the way schools and education spaces get designed today is too many people just buy flexible furniture, which just means like stuff on wheels that's modular, throw it in a classroom and say, look, modern learning environment. And
Uh-huh.
that that falls very short of what we should be doing. And of course there's so much data on good acoustics, natural light, so that
Yeah.
students' circadian rhythms are staying in balance, views of nature and views to the distance, which actually help your brain sort of reset, right? Views of nature help with creativity and calming. The ability to move. So one of the things that I like doing in schools and even workplaces is creating what I call a pace track, which is
Oh, that's
essentially
nice.
a route you can take, ideally outside, around a
Yeah.
courtyard or somewhere where you can just pace to think. And I do this here in my courtyard too. And it actually increases blood flow to the brain. And that circulation, being ambulatory in that way, helps with creativity, helps with focus, just mental performance. And I find that it actually helps me crack problems sometimes, like something I've been thinking about at my desk. And it's like I need to get out there and pace, and then I can really get through it. And one of the other things is that there's so many different goals in education. Of course, there's like the one primary goal, which is to educate people. But then within that, there's so many, like I've had Google, for example, they've been one of my partners for the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
They realize we have this problem in Silicon Valley where we don't have enough black and brown representation. It's very white, it's very Asian. Like we need more diversity in the people who actually design the tech that we all get to use.
Yeah.
And so they realized we need to increase the level of computer science education in high schools, especially in these communities that are primarily black and brown. And so for them, like they're educating, but they have a very specific purpose, which is to increase the number of minority students who go study computer science in college. Mm-hmm. They wanted to combat imposter syndrome. So make these kids feel like, well, just because you don't look like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, like that's okay. You belong in tech. You can be in this industry. That you should think more like a maker and not just a consumer. So get them into a maker mindset to instill confidence in them, because actually schools kind of beat the confidence out of you. You know, it's very Sir Ken Robinson, like we start off as divergent thinkers, then you're told there's one right answer on this test and you become convergent thinkers, right? So it gets the confidence out of you. And so they had several goals like that. And another one was getting kids to fall in love with computer science and just say, this is something I would love to do for a career. Those are very different goals than I had another client also in the Bay Area. It was a foundation called the Reset Foundation. And they realized that when we send men to prison, when they get out of prison, the recidivism rates, the chances that they end up back in prison are very high.
Yeah.
And this punitive system we have in America doesn't really work. And so they were convincing the court system to give them these young men so that they can put them on a campus and give them education and therapy and skills training. Again, it's still education and the ultimate goal is the same, but that flavor of education looks a little bit different than what I was doing with Google. So I think one of the key things in designing is to deeply, truly understand what is the problem I'm trying to solve with this space, and who is it for, and like what are their daily rhythms, what are their friction points, what prevents them from learning well, what makes it hard for them to teach well. You know, the same way, Louka, if I came over and I was designing your home for you and your family, I would get to know your daily rhythms and who you aspire to be. You might say, I want to be healthier. You're pretty fit anyways, but let's say you said, I wanted to be healthier. And you said, you know, help me, design me a space that can make me healthy, right? And so we would look at like, what are all the moments throughout the day where Louka kind of makes unhealthy choices?
Yeah.
And how can we make it the default for you to be healthy, right?
Yeah.
Like one thing I started doing years ago, two things I'll tell you. I started sitting on the floor more at home. There's cool. Studies out there where they studied twins over their lifetimes, and the twin that sits on the floor actually live longer because you have better mobility as you age, stronger lower body. And you know, for example, the Japanese, they've traditionally slept on like the shiki futons on the floor. So I lowered my bed and I stopped sitting on the couch as much, and I sit on a cushion on the floor. I also, before bed, I will fill up a bottle of water and I will put it near my desk, and I'll put my phone at my desk as well. So I won't bring my phone into the bedroom. Yeah. And when my alarm goes off in the morning, I've got a full bottle of water that triggers me to chug it and start the day hydrated, right? So basically like but I knew like these are some of my goals. Like I want to live a long time. I want to stay healthier throughout the day. I want to hydrate more. I want to sleep better, so I don't want my phone. It distracts me. I start looking at work texts and emails. You know? Yeah. So you have to figure out like who you're designing for and like what they aspire to, and then design around that with intention.
Do you find, Danish, that was really interesting. Not surprisingly, we have design features in our home, things like tech-free bedroom, no technology in the bedroom.
You guys
in
do
fact,
that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and
nice.
our phones are in the office, right? So we have to get up when the alarm goes off before we go to the gym. I do Celtic sea salt with creatine in a small glass of water every time I go. So it's so true. It's kind of like habit formation, you know, and in some ways removing friction of certain things and increasing friction in other ways. The challenge I see is that most design, because of the incentive model, we talked a bit about digital technology, most design pushes us towards decisions that maximize attention, perhaps if it's a digital product that's about time on platform, right? So it's, so, you know, you can design for somebody, but actually in the private sector, I try to be slightly skeptical and go, well, okay, they're solving a problem for me, but also I'm also the product here, depending on how the model works. And so I don't know, I wonder a bit about, like, for me, you have to become design literate to realize, oh yeah, I can see what's happening here. I can see why it's so easy to fall into an Instagram reel, you know, because of the way that it haps into our intermittent rewards and dopamine and the social fabric and network theory. So it's the same in physical environment. I think the supermarket one you talked about was really interesting as well, you know, and of course the chocolates are at eye level for children. And I don't know, you know, and the magazines, you know, just, one last thing. And so it's just design is everywhere, yeah.
For chocolates, they even did studies where they showed that if you take a chocolate bar and you round the edges, the corners,
right,
it tastes better to people. It tastes sweeter by rounding the edges. Like, since we're talking about design, that is design, right? It's a design choice.
Yeah,
like
100%.
I'm going to have a rectangular, you know, a square corners, or I'm going to have rounded corners, and the rounded corners taste sweeter, right? So, by the way, like to your point about the habit formation, right?
Yeah.
So for anyone that's read Atomic Habits, James Clear, he even talks about this, where he said, I think for himself, like if the apples he wants to eat more fruit, if the apples are in the crisper in the fridge, he's less likely to see them than if he puts them on a table somewhere, right? And they're out. Yeah. So same as a grocery store. So I think with the point about the digital environments, unfortunately, it feels like most of our digital environments are designed to manipulate us and profit off of us. I will say for our built environment, of course, there are examples like the grocery store, right, where they are incentivized to make money and profit. Yeah. And more often than not, actually, we end up with environments, physical environments, architecture, urban design, interior design, that's bad for us. Not out of malice, but out of ignorance. Gotcha. And of course, sometimes it's economics, right? We have very bland, flat, boring buildings that look cookie cutter and like no sense of charm or character or place, right? Yeah. That's economics, right? Yeah. And also ignorance. But I would say largely, like the reason we have the negative impacts of our environments is mostly out of ignorance. To your point, like people couldn't see what they were doing, didn't realize.
Can you take us into paint me a picture then, Danish? Because I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, what area you can control. If you're an educator, teacher listening to this, you can control the kind of four walls of your classroom. If you're a leader, you might be able to think more broadly about departments or perhaps an entire school or a new master planning process or refurbishment. Like you know, we want healthy, happier, more conducive spaces for learning. What do they look like? And I know that, you know, it'll be different depending on who the cohort is, as we've spoken to. But what are the universal design principles that you'd say you have? You talked about natural light, for example. Sure. Talked about ability to kind of move in some way, not just move furniture around on wheels. Yeah. What's the kind of, paint me a picture of, like, I want to walk into a space of the school of the future, and the learning future. Yeah. And like, what is it? What could it look like? Yeah,
well, you know, we've got certain physiological needs that need to be met. I need to be able to hear what someone's teaching. I need to feel comfortable temperature-wise. not too hot, not too cold. Otherwise, it's hard to focus, right? By the way, like when I'm pacing around the courtyard to think, if it's a very cold day or very windy day, I can't focus because I'm focused on the stimuli, the wind, right? And so it's almost like minimizing the feeling of any stimuli. That's right. Like if you imagine like being in a sensory deprivation chamber.
Yeah, I love those.
You can really think, right?
They're wild.
And so if you're at work or at school, and this could be school, you're in a classroom or you're in an admin office, there's a vent above you blowing air on you. It's kind of hard to focus, right? So taking care of what I would call these like basic physiological needs of like just making sure people are comfortable and that they can see what they need to see. They've got enough light. The acoustics are good. Temperature-wise, they're good. Then I think it gets to the fun stuff, which is like, okay, what kind of education are we trying to cook up? Are we at the type of school that kids are just being lectured at and moving from class to class? Or is this hands-on, project-based learning, real-world relevant, students driving this with their interests? Then that starts to look very different, right? Then you start to question even what's a classroom.
Well, yeah, I just want to get your point on this, like, because schools do things differently. But do you have a view on the better way? Or do you just say it's 1,000 flowers blooming, and that's sufficient?
No.
Because,
I do.
Tell us that piece. Because, when you put your flag in the sand and say, actually, based on everything I've learned, this is more important.
Yeah. And by the way, keep in mind, like my K through 12, I went through that, I'll call it traditional, like being lectured at, shuttling from 1 hour of math to 1 hour of science to 1 hour of art. And
yeah, me too.
so I experienced that. But then for undergrad and grad school, I went to design school, which is project-based learning. We are going to give you a challenge. You're going to research it. You're going to ideate. You're going to brainstorm with your peers. You're going to prototype. You're going to get some feedback. You're going to continue designing, and then you're going to present it to the community and get, feedback and learn that way. So that was a great educational experience, which was challenging, stimulating. You feel like you're in control. When I was in primary and secondary school, especially secondary, when I was in high school, I thought I hated reading. Wow. And then later I realized I didn't hate reading. I just hated reading what you told me to read, right? Because it didn't feel relevant to read Wuthering Heights and Heart of Darkness and these things. But when I get to read about design or business or sociology or things that I care about, I love it. So, yeah, I don't work with schools that are doing that traditional model. And I like to work with schools, educators, nonprofits that think they have a better way of doing things. And I tell them, I say, look, you're designing this amazing software. I'm going to give you the hardware that you can run it on. It's going to run perfectly, right? Yeah. And you need that. Like you're creating a product that you're putting out into the world. Like people will experience your product, students and families. And that software needs the right hardware to really fly, right? So I do. I'm not agnostic to learning models. Like I've experienced enough. I've seen enough in action to have a take. And I think maybe, Louka, even bigger than that is what we've been doing hasn't worked very well. So I want to partner with the ones who say, we're going to try something different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's great. It's definitely this, I think this moment for all of us as we look at the cognitive augmentation revolution, sometimes the cognitive offloading revolution, right? Which is the downside to that. We're seeing those impacts as well. We might have an easier life, but we might not be as intelligent. There's some interesting data on, reverse Flynn effect and cognitive decline in young people. So there's all that kind of stuff, right? So I think a lot about productive friction and unproductive friction. And, I think the issue is, I think what we're doing sometimes in the user-centered design model is I'm going to remove friction in the short term, which feels unproductive. But in the long term, it's actually incredibly productive.
Yeah.
And so in the end, you don't grapple enough. You to see someone grappling, but motivated grappling. That's the kind of gold star world that I believe in.
Yeah.
I'm coming to the end, Danish. I could talk to you for a whole day actually, but I'm curious just if you were to kind of scenario us out based on what you're working on and how you see signals and trends happening around the future of learning spaces. If we're having this conversation in 2040, when a toddler today is graduating from secondary school through high school, what do you think might be different? Perhaps what do you hope might be different in that future state for learners?
So I remember this was, I think, a year before I started writing The Spaces That Make Us. I met this gentleman in the Bay Area who, he's a professor, science professor at university, but he writes science curriculum for middle schoolers.
Right.
And he told me that when he goes to different states to say, hey, use my textbook for your science curriculum for middle school, because every 10 years or so they re-up their contracts.
Mm-hmm.
He said when he went to Texas, the school boards basically looked at his curriculum and said, you have to redact everything about fossil fuels and sustainability, otherwise we can't use this in our schools.
Wow.
And that was the first time, and maybe I'm naive for this, that was the first time where I realized that textbooks, when I was in school, I thought textbook is truth, right? That's how it's pitched to you. I mean, it's the textbook, like this is fact. And when I was in school, I didn't realize that there's so many agendas behind textbooks and curriculum. As I've gotten older and started working with schools, I've seen the absurdity of even just the content. Like, why was I asked to learn trigonometry when you didn't teach me personal finance? You were not setting me up for success in life.
That's
right?
a very interesting question, that one. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I would say in 2040, I hope that, one, we are teaching the right things that actually matter. And we are able to, as society, agree on what is truth. Because I think this is broader than just education. This is everything in the world, right? We've come to this point where we can't even agree on, during the pandemic, like what we should be doing and what's safe and what's not and what's right and what's wrong. Is we agree on truth. We can agree on that. And then we actually teach content that's worthwhile and worthy of the student's time.
Nice.
Because if I'm giving you that much time, I'm going to be really pissed off if later in life I realize that was a waste of my time. And we have figured out how to teach it well. So designing those experiences, as you said, like educator as architect or educator as designer, and set them up for success. So not just the software, but now also the hardware, right? The physical environment is right as well. So that would be my hope. I feel like it doesn't sound like I'm asking for much, but I recognize it is pretty aspirational.
Hey, we've got to have hope, mate.
Yeah.
It's like for me, it's action-based optimism. That's something I try to embody and remember. Not just think the world will be better, but do something to bring it into being in whatever small way I can. Danish, thank you so much for joining us. Your book, The Spaces That Make Us, Why Design is Broken and How We Can Create a Happier, Healthier World. I love, not just because it's about here's some ideas on design or physical space, but because it's the idea that design is an operating system that we can see through. And we didn't talk about it in this chat, but Baham, this idea of everything is in tandem. We're always in systems working together, in relationship with, the character and the context. We talked about that. So I want you to just close us out with just kind of a reflection you want to leave us with. What's a take-home message for the people that have taken the time out of their day to get into this conversation?
I think I'd love for everyone to, one, develop an awareness and recognition of how much their surroundings are influencing them. And more than that, realize that we all have agency. So when my mother's in the hospital for an illness, can I redesign the hospital in that moment? No. But can I request that her recovery room be one that has a window facing nature? Because I know the studies that show she's going to heal faster, have less pain, have better long-term recovery, and get out of there sooner if she's staring at nature versus a blank wall. Can I request that? Yes. In that moment, I have the agency to do that. As a teacher, can I change what's within my four walls? Of course. As a school leader, a district leader, a superintendent, next time we're building a new school, I can think differently about it and make sure that I'm partnering with a thinker who's thinking about all of these things and not just replicating what's been done before. Or if I'm a parent, can I redesign my child's school? No, but I can go there and advocate that my child deserves a good learning environment that is going to set them up for success instead of hurting them.
Yeah.
So we all have agency somewhere. And so the challenge is think about where you have agency in your built environment, and don't just, it's okay to be a product of our environments. We don't want to be victims of them, right? So
Nice.
redesign them wherever you can so that they shape us for the better.
That's beautiful. It took me to as a parent, you can't design your child's school, you can advocate, but you can help them design their bedroom with certain
Absolutely.
features that
Of course.
support that. Yeah.
You have agency
one
over
without
your home.
technology. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, without a big TV on the wall, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Danish, such a pleasure to reconnect with you, mate. Thank you so much for this conversation on the Learning Future podcast, but also for the work you do.
Thank you, Louka. No, it's been my pleasure. It's always good seeing you.